Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
Well, guys, as we have been discussing in this show, it looks like the Biden-led Dems are set to score a victory, finally bringing the worst parts of their caucus around to at least doing something to address the needs of the American people and the mounting toll of the climate crisis. But how big is that victory exactly? To hear the media tell it, this is monumental, it's landmark, it's historic, it's the best week ever. In a week, Biden went from left for dead to the most consequential president in a generation. So let's take a closer look at what exactly we're talking about here. The so-called Inflation Reduction Act will hike taxes on corporate America. It will improve the IRS's ability to hunt down wealthy tax cheats. It will reduce carbon emissions through a basket of measures. It will maintain Affordable Care Act subsidies and at long last allow Medicare to negotiate some prescription drug prices. It will also use some of that increased revenue from tax hikes to reduce the deficit. Now, the overall impact, it's relatively modest. The biggest spend and impact is on climate, and here is how Ryan Grim breaks all of that down. He says, in a world in which this bill becomes law, the energy industry will still be tilted toward fossil fuels, but clean energy will be competing on a much more even playing field. The clean energy banks and the tax credits will bring in private investment that is many times the sticker price of the public spending. In that world, there is a chance that technological progress will make clean energy cheap enough it drives dirty energy out of business. And there is also genuine hope that innovation around capturing and sequestering carbon and, say, turning it into rock underground can make a dent in atmospheric concentration levels. Putting public money behind these kinds of efforts at least gives humanity a shot. Listen. Certainly having an outside shot is better than no chance at all, which is the reality of the status quo without this bill. But it can only really be celebrated as a big win in comparison to the nothing that it looked like Democrats were going to achieve through the reconciliation process. In effect, Manchin won and Sinema won. They demonstrated so thoroughly that they were happy to torch it all and burn it all down to please their donors that everyone basically decided, what are you going to do? You got to give them precisely what they want. In other words, this was not a negotiation. It was a hostage situation. But it's never a fair fight when you actually care about doing something decent and the other side just literally does not. Remember, the original idea for this bill, back when it was Build Back Better, was much closer to being accurately called transformational, and it was still far from what was really truly needed for the American people. It had a much more sweeping green energy plan. It also had major new social spending to support families, children, elders, and architect a new era of labor organizing. Bernie has done a good job throughout the short period of debate on the Inflation Reduction Act, reminding us all of just how much has been lost and how inadequate the Biden agenda actually has proved to be. In particular, he was derided by his colleagues for pushing for provisions that every Democrat allegedly supports. Here they are in creepy, orchestrated unison, proudly proclaiming they will vote against things that they like in the name of Democratic Party unity. Then, when it came time to vote, Bernie had the audacity to offer some of these provisions as amendments, including expanding Medicare to cover vision and hearing, something that is wildly popular, also cutting subsidies to big oil, and extending the child tax credit. Now, take the child tax credit as just one example. This, again, is allegedly backed by every single Senate Democrat. Yet Bernie was sneered at on the floor by his supposedly progressive ally, Senator Sherrod Brown, who urged his colleagues to stand united against doing the thing that, again, they all pretend to support.
Senator from Vermont.
If I could ask my friend from Ohio, why would passage of this amendment or getting 48 votes on this amendment bring the overall bill down?
Madam President, Senator Sanders, the arrangement in this is all 50 Democrats support this. We know every single Republican has voted against the child tax credit, not once last March, but twice. But we know that this is a fragile arrangement, and we've got to pass it as much as I'd like to do it.
Senator from Ohio, all time has expired.
Come on, Bernie.
So, you've got essential needs of the American people left on the cutting room floor because reasons. It's also worth remembering that some portions of this bill could have been accomplished and in more complete fashion by Joe Biden himself acting alone. So, as we discussed earlier, Kyrsten Sinema, she extracted her pound of flesh before agreeing to this deal by fully protecting the carried interest loophole that benefits some of the worst Wall Street ghouls on the planet. She is obviously terrible. But what do we say about a president who could completely close this loophole all on his own and just doesn't? This analysis that's up on the screen now from 2016, this was under Obama, but this still holds true today. Biden could instruct his Treasury Secretary to close this loophole right now, something that would be good and also hugely popular among all but a very small set of very wealthy and very well-connected individuals. Instead of doing anything on carried interest, Sinema instead subbed in a provision for a 1% excise tax on stock buybacks. That is the disgusting practice corporations have become addicted to in recent years, where rather than invest in their workers or innovation or product, they just buy their own stock in a kind of pyramid scheme that juices their stock prices, rewarding their wealthy execs, investors, and themselves. But you know what's better than a 1% excise tax? Returning to rules which were in place before the Reagan administration, which banned stock buybacks altogether. Something, again, Biden could also do all on his own. And that's, of course, to say nothing of student debt, marijuana legalization, canceling the contracts of union busters, hundreds of other actions that he could use his executive power to accomplish. A similar story of gaslighting and failing to live up to the hype could be told about all of the other so-called landmark legislation reporters are now pointing to as evidence of Biden's transformational presidency. A guns bill, which is unlikely to significantly curb gun violence. An infrastructure bill, which still won't even fully update our infrastructure. An attempted industrial policy through the CHIPS Act, which leaves workers to be exploited. And now a climate bill, which also contains a bunch of oil industry Easter eggs. They're all better than nothing, but they're also not even close to what they're being advertised as. You add them together in a tweet or on a cable news panel, it sounds pretty impressive. FDR, LBJ, Biden, they're basically the same, right, guys? But as I've long said, Democrats and Biden do not have a messaging problem. They have a reality problem. And this bill, along with the rest of the Biden accomplishments, leave far too much of our present reality intact. Yes, the bill's a net positive, but it is a long way from redemption for the listless Biden administration. And I'm sure you have seen these tweets. I've seen cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.